Tonight, the image is still coming in after that strong earthquake hit Southern California.
Tonight, families in Southern California bracing for aftershock.
California crust shift. California is no stranger to geological drama. Its mountains, valleys, shimmering lakes, and sweeping plains are the products of tectonic energies that span millions of years. But what unfolded this summer felt different. A tremor of unease that rippled from seismology labs to living rooms in a matter of hours. On a day that began like any other, the earth beneath California revealed a rapid, unexpected shift deep in the crust, registered only by specialized instruments, but felt in the collective imagination of millions who call this land home. Within hours, the United States Geological Survey took a notable step. Scientists gathered around seismograms and satellite maps, their conversations tense and urgent. The announcement was abrupt and clear. California was now under a red alert. Beneath neighborhoods and schools, beneath the woven infrastructure of towns and cities, the crust was shifting in places previously considered quiet. It wasn't just the abruptness of the shift that startled the scientific community, but its location. A major fault system previously assumed to be stable was now subtly but unmistakably moving. Phones lit up with emergency notifications. Social feeds pulsed with new maps and speculation. In classrooms and workplaces, wary glances turned toward windows and door frames. Scientists compared this surge in seismic activity to unrest sometimes observed around volcanic regions, where warnings are raised as a precaution. But this time, it was happening beneath the very centers of everyday life. Could this sudden crustal drama, this mysterious trigger, be the start of something California has always feared? A powerful quake arriving with little warning? As pressure builds both underground and in communities above, a troubling question lingers over every alert. What else may be shifting in the darkness below, poised to reshape the world above? Hidden fault forces. To understand the gravity of the recent red alert, we must look beneath California's familiar terrain, a region mapped less by human eyes than by the silent recordings of sensors and instruments. For decades, it was believed that California's major faults, those boundaries that mark the edges of tectonic plates, could be monitored, measured, and, to some degree, anticipated. Bridges were reinforced, schools retrofitted, and emergency drills conducted. But as history has shown time and again, tectonic stability often runs only skin deep. In early summer, a new survey by the U.S. Geological Survey brought a surprise. The Concord Fault, a geological feature once considered relatively quiet, is indeed active and moving, driven by ongoing tectonic motion. Below neighborhoods and schools, the very bedrock was, and is, shifting. Adding complexity, seismic networks detected a rapid, unanticipated movement of the crust at greater depth, a swift adjustment with few, if any, of the customary foreshocks or early warning tremors. The motion did not fit the character of slow fault creep, nor did it hint at a classic crescendo of earthquake escalation. Rather, it resembled an abrupt release of pent-up energy, observable only as the hurried tremors captured on seismographs. This movement was not isolated. At the same time, certain volcano observatories in the state reported increased seismic activity and minor shifts in thermal signals at one of California's volcanic centers. The simultaneous signals from different points beneath California suggested that multiple parts of the state's deep interior might be reacting to shared or related tectonic stresses. Elsewhere, monitoring stations such as ARC near Arcata at Fickle Hill in Northern California picked up new tremors that spread ripples far beyond the initial crustal shift. Each recording captured subtle deviations from the long-established seismic norms. What, then, does this mean for a region where stability often proves fleeting? The latest findings suggest that California's greatest seismic hazards do not always rest within the familiar outlines of well-studied faults. Now, even those faults once considered quiescent are showing signs of life, and the ground itself signals that the story beneath our feet continues to evolve. Red alert faults. Few phrases in California are as unsettling as red alert. The USGS is known for its cautious, evidence-based approach and rarely issues such high-level warnings. So when red alert notifications cut through the regular news cycle, they signal not just a technical event, but a sweeping cultural alarm. California's major seismic hazards have long been thought to come mainly from mapped threats, well-known faults, regional subductions, or marginal geothermal zones. Local governments plan for the next one, and earthquake safety measures form part of routine life. But this red alert, issued in June 2025, tested that sense of preparedness. Unusually, this alert did not focus on famous faults like the one beneath San Francisco or the southern San Andreas. It was linked instead to sudden movement beneath an area previously believed to be more stable, the Concord Fault. Recent USGS surveys confirm the Concord Fault is active and, crucially, in motion. The alert's timing was challenging, as California's network of seismic stations registered not just a single tremor, but what appears to be an incoming sequence. 3 identifiable seismic waves projected to impact the area between June 14th and June 26th, 2025. Concerns swelled at the possibility of aftershocks or related quakes that could strain infrastructure and test readiness. These were not theoretical threats. Real energy, tracked through the earth, was moving toward heavily populated community. Meanwhile, volcano monitors continued to observe increased activity near a significant California volcano, and scientists took note of the apparent connection between crustal movement and heightened seismicity. The neat separation of risks, earthquakes on one side, volcanoes on another, suddenly seemed blurrier, less compartmentalized. Agencies rushed to coordinate. The Department of State, for instance, issued wider travel caution alerts, warning of possible disruptions, adding to a broad sense of vigilance. When the emergency messages came through, red alert, millions were left to consider what, if anything, could be done to ready themselves for whatever might follow. How should we respond to the revelation that secondary faults can awaken, shifting the ground beneath hard-won routines, and that the line between security and risk is drawn by forces neither fully seen nor truly tamed? Silent crust signal. Crustal movement is, by nature, quiet. It often signals its arrival not with the loudness of a quake, but with incremental shifts, a silent buildup of strain. Earthquake science has long rested on the understanding that major events are typically preceded by weeks or months, sometimes years, of warning signs. Small tremors, subtle ground warping, or changes in microseismic patterns. This time, though, the warning was unusually brief. The shift beneath California was both swift and lacking in clear precursor signals. There were no clusters of foreshocks, no marked groundswell, no visible warning sign. Instead, the movement appeared sudden, recorded in an instant by observatories, and then corroborated through cross-checks at multiple monitoring stations from the north at Arcata to locales further south. Modeling these events against past data, researchers noted a worrying correspondence. Realignments of stress deep in the region often foreshadow larger, surface-level events elsewhere in earthquake-prone parts of the world. The new evidence pointed to heightened risk, particularly for zones above and near the now active Concord Fault. There, beneath the rhythms of daily life, children at school, families at breakfast, a section of crust was quietly but significantly realigning. Seismologists updated hazard models with this new data, The consensus: this episode increased the risk of a larger quake, one that could occur with minimal, if any, obvious buildup. The stillness, it now appeared, might be less a sign of peace than a hint of tension waiting to be unleashed. With risk rising, authorities and engineers responded. Water towers, bridges, and key pieces of infrastructure were inspected again. At every crossing of fault lines, the precarious balance between human engineering and geologic volatility became uncomfortably clear. Interacting fault risks. The Concord Fault's recent movement is unlikely to be an isolated event. California's vast network of faults is interconnected, a dynamic tapestry of stresses and releases. Each segment, while distinct, can transmit shifts in pressure, creating the potential for broader cascades. In the aftermath of the initial crustal motion, USGS computers ran fresh simulations. Their scenarios, once thought improbable, now suggested that a localized slip on a secondary fault could have effects on neighboring faults, potentially triggering further movements, an unfolding sequence of worrisome possibilities. This was reinforced by predictions of seismic energy moving toward California through late June, amplifying concern over what was already observable on sensors. Coinciding with fault movement, increased seismicity and subtle changes in geothermal signals were noticed at a prominent volcano. Observatory staff registered minor increases in temperature, altered gas emissions, and new patterns of tremor, possible indicators of shifting fluids deep in the earth, which sometimes accompany both tectonic and volcanic unrest. This chain reaction risk is more than theoretical. In other regions of the world, sequences of related fault ruptures have intensified damage and complicated response. California's infrastructure, its transportation corridors, utility lines, and railways must now contend with the possibility of multi-fault interactions, a risk for which most systems were not specifically designed. In city planning meetings and emergency operations centers, new strategies were discussed. Engineers revisited the question: if multiple faults move in close succession, will critical lifelines hold? Or do these threats demand a rethinking of old disaster playbooks? It is not certain whether the converging seismic waves will dissipate harmlessly or combine to produce larger shocks. The possibility is real enough, however, to prompt extensive review and renewed vigilance. California infrastructure threat. Crustal movement, while subterranean, is not just an abstract event. It cuts deep into the texture of everyday life. Much of California's infrastructure, from the cities overlying the Concord Fault to the vast webs of roads and aqueducts, was built with an awareness of seismic risk, yet not all segments are equally prepared. Urban centers such as Concord sit directly atop active fault lines, their spread a testament to the drive for growth, but also their vulnerability. A sudden shift underground can fracture water mains, disrupt gas lines, and render key roads impassable. Even minor crustal changes can have outsized effects, isolating neighborhoods, straining emergency response. In places with older buildings, notably schools, brick homes, and heritage structures, the risk is heightened. Many of these erected before modern seismic codes may be less resilient to shaking, their foundations less able to survive abrupt movement. The geological character of parts of California compounds these dangers. In sediment-rich valleys, seismic shaking sometimes liquefies soil, destabilizing building foundations and increasing risk for communities well beyond the immediate fault. Emergency planners know from history that even modest shifts in ground behavior can ripple through the daily function of life. The awareness of renewed risk manifests in multiple ways. City governments revisit emergency plans. School officials rehearse more detailed drills, expanding from duck and cover to complex full-scale evacuation exercises. Residents take inventory. Anxiety rides on every unexplained tremor. Was it mere coincidence or the start of something more? While modern California is arguably more prepared than ever, its development, built on and sometimes disregarding the patterns of the past, remains vulnerable when the Earth moves unpredictably. Prediction limits. Quakes. Despite a flood of data from satellites, ground stations, and collaborative agencies, the science of earthquake prediction remains uncertain and probabilistic. Earthquakes, even after decades of research, emerge from complex, non-linear systems that defy simple forecasts. This recent crustal shift challenged established models. Many believed that major events would follow clear, gradual clues, swarms of microquakes, surface changes, or increasing gas emissions. Here, the Concord Fault's unexpected motion forced a reckoning. Sometimes danger accumulates quietly, breaking with little prelude. Within the scientific community, debate sharpened. Some experts noted parallels with periods of heightened activity that ultimately subsided. Others, looking at the confluence of recent motion, raised warnings about newly awakened vulnerabilities. The risk models were updated not for certainty, but to better reflect the new range of potential outcomes. To ordinary Californians, this ambiguity was more than an academic concern. It played out in the choices they made day to day, checking home foundations for cracks, discussing insurance limits, and reading state alerts with new attention. In neighborhoods across the state, community meetings grew more frequent as people swapped information and prepared for a landscape of risk made ever more real. Uncertainty is now a daily companion. Whether the current red alert is a rare episode or the beginning of more severe events remains unclear. Faultline Vigilance. As the red alert continues, California exists in a state of watchful patience. Communities above the active Concord Fault feel the tension more acutely, both the physical risk and the sense of unease that comes with living atop a shifting foundation. Stories spread quickly, subtle vibrations at odd hours, unseasonal cracks in old driveways. Local officials intensify their outreach. Teachers revise earthquake drills to include more comprehensive safety protocols, and parents double-check their emergency supplies. At every level, the chain of readiness grows stronger, driven by the recognition that the familiar world can change rapidly. City authorities and state agencies review critical plans for hospitals, utilities, and evacuation routes. Utility crews reinforce backup systems and inspect fault crossings. Emergency operation centers remain at high readiness, tracking seismic patterns, updating strategies, and planning for contingencies. Online, social networks amplify every observation. Images of roadside fissures, anecdotal reports of tremors, and warning advisories circulate rapidly. The common theme: pay attention. The land, in its subtle ways, is changing. While disorder has not yet struck, there is a broader, quieter shift, a regional awareness that lingers at every conversation and preparation. For all their experience, Californians are reminded again, security here is provisional, and alertness is always essential. California Red Alert. Days pass, new readings flow in, and the red alert remains. Scientists and engineers analyze every fresh tremor, every outlier on the graph, every new crack in the landscape. Preparedness takes material form. Civil organizations organize safety seminars and improve communication systems. Portable power equipment and satellite phones are positioned for rapid use. Volunteer efforts intensify, particularly in neighborhoods with older or more vulnerable populations. There's realism too. The forces beneath California's surface operate on timescales and according to mechanisms we can observe but not fully control. Society's best efforts can only mitigate, not eliminate, the risks inherent in living atop a restless, ever-shifting crust. Still, in this period of uncertainty, a kind of resolve emerges. Each emergency plan, each updated community drill, Each shared lesson is evidence of adaptation and resilience. California has never truly forgotten the power beneath its feet. That awareness is baked into its history, its science, and its daily routines alike. Across laboratories, classrooms, and living rooms, the same thought recurs. Is this merely the latest chapter in California's seismic story, or the prologue to something larger? The answer, as always, is written not in stone, but in the silent, shifting depths below. What is certain is this: vigilance and cooperation are enduring assets. Through periods of heightened alert, it remains essential to stay informed, stay prepared, and support one another. Whether the current red alert fades into memory or announces a new era of seismic understanding, one truth remains. While we do not command the ground beneath our feet, we can choose how we respond, together, when the Earth moves. If this look at California's recent tremors has brought you insight, share this story with others living along the fault lines. The Earth signals, uttered in silence, in tremor, or even in alert, are reminders of both our vulnerability and our collective strength. For as long as California endures, its story will be shaped by those who watch, learn, and prepare for all the world unfolding below.